So something I've noticed is that a lot of people seem to have this belief that talking to a stranger under any circumstances is always going to be weird or creepy unless you have a clear reason for doing that. And I wanted to delve into this a little bit more because this is definitely a belief that I held at one point in time. I used to think that if someone else is going about their day, if they're minding their own business, then what business do I have talking to them? They're not interested in talking to me. They're busy. And I think whilst there are some contexts where it is going to be more socially acceptable to strike up a conversation with someone you don't know, like, I don't know, like a bar or a club where people are actively looking to mingle, is going to be more appropriate than trying to talk to someone in like a dark alleyway in the middle of the night. But again, just something else I've been thinking about is that during a time not too long ago when I didn't have the most active social life, by not embracing all of these little opportunities, these like spontaneous interactions, by doing that, I was denying myself so many opportunities to just make friends going about my day. I've made some of my best friends just by being opportunistic, being open to just chatting to the people around me as I go about my day. And to be honest, taking a risk by asking people whether they wanted to hang out, like much sooner than most other people would. I've met some of the best people in my life through doing that. And just to be totally clear, I'm not only talking about places that I would go to every day, like my 9 to 5 or university or the gym, I don't know. I literally mean like just in everyday settings, like you're in the cafe waiting in line for coffee, or in the fucking elevator, or I don't know, like waiting for the bus or something, just chatting to people spontaneously, the people in my vicinity. I've done this as a way of making new friends and to meet girls, and I've actually been pretty successful doing it. And I know a lot of people are probably rolling their eyes, like, why would you even want to make friends with strangers or people you don't know? Like, what's the point in doing that? And again, I would have thought that at a certain time in my life, but right now, with the experience I have, I know that after you get to a certain point in your life, there are actually like a limited amount of opportunities to make friends. People talk about mutual friends, or I don't know, make friends through like hobby groups or go to sports after work. But what if you don't have friends to begin with? You can't have mutual friends if you're like new to the area and you don't know anyone. What if you don't have time to be going to all these activities after work? And there's a lot of people who you'll share interests with, you would have a lot to talk about, but you never know that unless you just talk to them. Most of these people you just walk by on the street without ever knowing that you have anything in common. So I just wanted to explore this in a video. I wanted to make a video about how to talk to strangers and make friends with them without it seeming forced or creepy. And obviously there would be a distinction between how you approach someone in a socially friendly environment like a bar versus how you would talk to someone just on the street. But I come up with like a one-size-fits-all approach that will have you covered. So I'm going to present to you my 5-step framework, all based on my own experiences as a really introverted guy who just tests the limits of his social skills every fucking week. So let's just get into it. So first of all, we have to understand this really important mindset. And this is going to go against a lot of like programming that modern society kind of puts you into. And this is that most people, strangers included, actually want to connect with other people. So humans as a species are very much not hardwired to be solitary beings. We've only made it this far. We've only survived for like 1,000 years through community dynamics, through working together, through like collaborating with strangers and like people in our tribe. We've not been brought into this world to be fully self-sustaining and not rely on anyone else for help, or to just ignore all of the people around us. Like, you can't tell me this isn't the case, because there is literally a part of our brain that rewards us with like positive feelings like dopamine and oxy, whatever, like chemicals in your brain that reward you for positive social interactions, for being part of a tribe and making connections with the people around you. Like, this is a part of our biology, and it's only in recent years where this whole attitude of don't talk to me unless you have a reason to has become the norm. And honestly, it's not even the norm in most parts of the world. Like, that attitude is like a very Western oriented way of thinking. There's a bunch of cultures across the world, like in Latin America, where or any kind of country that is a bit more collectivist, where it is completely normal to just strike up conversations with the people around you, whether you know them or not. Like one of my buddies from Africa who moved to the UK was actually quite confused by how different it felt. Like he tells me that like back home, people will just be talking to each other wherever they go. Like it's more of a community feel. And again, I think people might look to that and they'll think places in the West, like the UK and the US, like people are just unfriendly and they don't want to talk. But I actually think that belief in itself is not even rooted in the truth. I think this idea that any and all unsolicited friendliness is creepy is just ignoring so much context, like not even just like being respectful in your approach, but just like positive body language and like friendly tone of voice. This isn't a video about dating, but I've been day gaming for the past year, like going out to the city and trying to meet girls just spontaneously. And there seems to be this whole online narrative that, you know, if you just approach a girl on the street and try and get her number, then she's going to call the police on you, which it's honestly just so far-fetched from reality. Like I've never once had a negative reaction from a girl because I've been respectful in my approach. Like I've always come across really friendly. I've never tried to force it when she doesn't look like she's in the mood. And that has like a lot to do with how you're going to get received. I've even had a bunch of girls literally thank me for going over because no one does that anymore. Everyone's just like relying on Tinder and all these other stuff. No one meets each other organically anymore. So I think if you're to just listen to all these like online narratives about, oh, it's creepy or I don't know, like stranger danger, you're just going to end up with no friends. You're just going to end up being really lonely and quite secluded. So I guess just to round it all up, I think a key mindset for talking to strangers of any kind is that don't go in with the expectation that it has to result in a friendship. Like any conversation, you have to end up best friends with them. Don't put that much pressure on yourself. Kind of just go in with the intention of having like a light, genuine exchange and just seeing what comes of it. I'm massively in favor of just going about your day and being friendly to the people around you. Just even having 30-second conversations with like the cashier or you're waiting for someone at the bus stop. And there's a good amount of scientific evidence that having a 30-second positive interaction can raise the mood of both people for hours at a time and like really subside these feelings of loneliness that we're more prone to. Now more than ever, people are just feeling lonely, like especially after COVID, and they're much more up for a chat than you'd think. So the second thing you should always aim to do when talking to strangers is go first. So again, whilst I firmly believe that most people are looking to connect with strangers and the people around them, just also based off my own experience, I know that most people just don't want to go first. No one wants to be the one to break the ice or really put their ego on the line. I don't know if it's because they just don't want to risk rejection, even though like I personally feel like rejections in this context are just never as bad as you make them out to be. But yeah, something it makes me think of is I'm always at the train station, like crammed in this massive elevator full of people. And as we're going up to the next floor, it's like no one's talking. And there's this like awkward tension in this elevator. And I know that if I were to just crack a joke or just make a little comment, that would do so much just to diffuse the tension. Like all the people in that elevator would just feel 10 times better. A reminder I tell myself very often is just saying anything at all, just speaking my mind in a particular situation or making a dumb comment is always going to be a win. It's like the skill of being more bold and more brave. If you want to make friends and just have a better, more social time on this earth, then you have to be willing to put the effort in and break the ice to maybe carry the conversation until they feel more comfortable opening up, because it is entirely normal that people do kind of have their guard up a little bit. This thought just keeps coming up for me that if I hadn't been the one to go first and put in that initial effort to talk to people, how many of my best friends would I have just let walk past me? How many have just like evaded me without me realizing? So just keep in mind that saying anything at all sometimes is a win, and you know, it's training yourself to kind of get out of your head, out of your comfort zone and into the present moment. So step number 3 is to look for openings. So obviously it goes without saying that when you're strangers with someone else and you don't have that mutual friend to introduce you, you are going to sometimes have to get a bit creative with like starting the conversation. And I think this is honestly the thing that people overthink the most, even though like it can actually be like quite a fun, creative exercise, like thinking of a conversation starter. But yeah, the easiest openings are just things that both of you share in the moment. You know, whether it's an environment that you're both in or an activity you're both taking part in, or even just something that they've chosen to make visible about themselves. And the reason these three are so good is because they just feel natural. It's like you're not starting a conversation out of nowhere. It's not forced. It's just these quite low risk topics to just get the ball rolling. So I'll get the ball rolling with just a couple of examples of comments or questions that you could ask. Say the environment is a cafe. You just make a comment like, "This line is taking a lot longer than I thought." Simple. If the activity was the gym, you could just say, "Have you ever used this machine before? You know, I'm still figuring it out. I can use a bit of help with it." For an object or person-based opener, you could say, "I really like your jacket. Where did you get it?" It feels kind of cringy me like using these examples out loud because it's like, I don't like it feeling like a little bit scripted, but anything along those lines is okay. Like, I honestly feel like this is the part of the process out of everything not to overthink. I think with the right energy and the right demeanor, if you're friendly and respectful in the way that you approach, you could have a conversation about anything. When it comes to our brain's abilities to like recall information about things like conversations, we often remember the end of a conversation a lot better. That's the thing that sticks in our mind. Like, that insight really takes the pressure off me because really, like, the conversation can start a bit awkwardly or just about something a bit mundane. But if you can build that up, which is what I'm going to explain later, into something like a bit more interesting, then that is the thing that will stick in their head. But yeah, just a few rules for your openers. Try and keep it quite lighthearted. Like, don't make any comments which are like too personal. Like, I'll let you be the judge of that, to be honest. And also keep it authentic. Like, ask questions that you actually want to know the answer to. Give compliments that you actually mean, because believe it or not, people can tell the difference when you're being sincere. So number 4, what to actually say and how to keep the conversation going. Now, I thought quite hard about what to actually include for this one because this is a really deep topic, and you know, conversation itself is such a fluid and unpredictable thing. It's quite hard to condense into like one point in a video. But I've talked so much about things like small talk and kind of how to keep a conversation going for a long time. And I'll put a few videos up on screen right now to help you out with that. But I think the idea that I really wanted to explore, which really applies to talking to strangers in particular, was this idea of like pacing conversations in a way that feels natural. So I describe any kind of conversation with a stranger as a bit like you're almost like holding their hand as you walk them down a set of stairs. What you would do is take one step, then pause to see if the other person follows. Then if they do, you take another step. You take it very, very slow and you kind of go at their pace. So in case it's not clear how that translates into conversation, what I mean by this is if you've only just started talking to someone, if you've only just learnt their name for the first time, you wouldn't immediately then go and start talking to them about like politics or like a really sensitive subject, like, I don't know, like talking to a university girl about Donald Trump or something like that, because then you kind of risk just losing them altogether or polarizing them too quickly before you've built up that like mutual trust and rapport. I don't know, maybe you want to polarize people, like that's not for me to answer for you. But yeah, if we were to look at this as like levels, it's like a process of going up level by level. If we say level 1 is just like what we've done already, like making small observations, low risk openers, like commenting on the immediate context. If they were to respond well to that, then we go up to level 2. So just a little side note that came into my head right now. It's like if we're referring to small talk as level 1, I know a lot of people seem to hate small talk, and it does stress a lot of people out, like that kind of awkward phase where we don't know exactly what to say. But I think small talk really does serve an important purpose. On an evolutionary psychology level, we're not even aware of this, but we're still like scanning our environment for threats. Every time a new person enters into our vicinity, we are kind of like weighing up whether they're like a threat to our safety or not. We're not even aware of this. Like, we still have these like caveman brains that haven't even like adapted to the modern era yet. But small talk, just like saying words to each other, like the words themselves aren't important. It's just a way of like determining whether this person is a threat to our safety. Just seeing if they're all right or not. You know, just exchanging a couple of sentences and realizing that they're not going to attack us or humiliate us. that's an important process that we have to go through. Generally speaking, people don't have like really deep, meaningful conversations with other people without first going through that small talk phase. So just something to keep in mind. So if we do successfully get to level 2, then level 2 is just low risk sharing of like opinions, like things you like or don't like, mild opinions, nothing too controversial, just showing a little bit more of who you are. Like, I love this artist, or I'm not a fan of this food, or I prefer this thing to this thing. Then level 3 would be sharing more of your experiences, like stories and anecdotes, getting in more of your like personal history. I first tried this thing when I was in Italy. I used to love this when I was in high school. The worst thing happened to me when I worked at this place. And then level 4 would be like the truly deep stuff, you know, the things in life that matter to you, maybe kind of more vulnerable territory, things that you wouldn't tell just anyone, you know, the true reason you hold certain opinions on these things or whatever. I'm weirdly obsessed with this because it makes me feel like this. I get nervous before doing this thing, or I've always wanted to do this since I was a kid. So with this system of levels, what we've got to keep in mind is that the whole point of it is to take things at their pace. It's to like build up naturally, to not force anything. So we want to be paying close attention to like how this is being received by them. If they respond well to the things we're saying, like they're taking an interest, they're adding their own comments, they're asking us questions, then we kind of have the all clear to take it up a level. But if they seem quite guarded, like their replies are quite short or closed, they're not interested in hearing more about what we've got to say, or they even just look a bit uncomfortable, then we're free to go back down a level or just wish them a nice day and be grateful for the practice. If we were to just jump from level 1 to level 4, what we've got to remember is like, I mean, a lot of people who like overshare are guilty of this kind of behavior. It's like a lot of people see people just like sharing loads of intimate details about their life out of nowhere. It's like they see that as like a little bit manipulative, because usually it would like take time to build up that level of trust where you can kind of confide that level of like vulnerability in someone else. So people can kind of question your intentions a bit and think you're trying to shortcut your way to like emotional intimacy with that person. Pretty much it just feels like a little bit fake and like unwarranted. But yeah, just remember the objective is not necessarily to reach level 4 every time. You know, I've had plenty of friends where we never even get to level 4. We're just like level 3, we're just kind of bantering, having a good time. And it's also as much a process of figuring out whether you even want to be emotionally intimate with this other person. You might talk to them and realize they're a complete cunt and just like not want to even go that deep. But yeah, just take things slow, monitor their reactions, and just try and enjoy yourself. So the fifth and final thing I want to talk about, and I want to keep this quite brief because I'm aware I've been talking a long time, is simply to, whenever you feel a connection, just don't be afraid to get their contact details. So after doing so much of the hard work, I think this is where most people end up shooting themselves in the foot. I think we all have this weird idea of when it's socially acceptable to get someone else's contact details or ask them if they want to hang out again. A lot of people think that just one conversation with someone, even if you really did get on well and you had so many things in common, they'll still tell themselves that that is somehow too early to ask this other person if they want to hang out again. And I'm here to tell you that if you listen to this part of your brain every time, you will just end up really friendless and lonely and just unhappy. To reiterate again, I've made some of my best friends, met some of my favorite people just because I was willing to take that risk of asking them whether they wanted to hang out again before most people would consider it socially acceptable. And of course it is a risk. Of course you will get the occasional person who's just kind of unfriendly and they won't be receptive. But most of the time, if you feel the connection's there, if you feel you have that common ground, then I'd say you don't stand to lose anything by asking. You know, chances are that you might not ever see this person again. So, I mean, again, what do you have to lose? I think environments like the gym are really good for this because you can just suggest, let's do a workout or let's do this activity together. It feels quite casual. It's like quite low stakes. You know, they're going to be there anyway to get on with this particular activity. Might as well just try and make a new friend or just hang out with someone different. So yeah, I just can't stress enough. If you only take one more thing away from this video, let it be this. Like, just don't be afraid to just ask. Yeah, I'm feeling like this will probably turn out to be a really long video, but this is just packed with all my insights that I've been learning recently. So much of like my own experience experiences have gone into this. So hopefully you found it as useful as I found it. But yeah, take care, my friends, and I will see you in the next one.